This is a Hot Pie Media original. Welcome to the Amy Edwards Show. I'm your host, Amy Edwards. I'm sitting here breathing for a second, taking a breath in and out. I just started an intro and I was like, nope, let me take a breath. Sometimes we're going too fast. Sometimes we need to slow down a little bit. And that's perfectly okay. I am so thrilled to be here and I'm so thrilled that you're here. So take a breath with me. We're going to have an incredible conversation today with Dr. Sheila Grace Newsom, the founder of Finding Metis, which is a home concierge, medical doctor-led ketamine transformation experience, I would suppose we'd call it. It's probably better on the website. I should read that, but which I will. And we're going to get to all that. I'm so excited because it's an incredible conversation about Sheila's history, about ketamine's history, and about the soul consciousness of ketamine. And I think you're going to love it. If you're at all curious about it, or if you're experienced in ketamine, you're going to find value in this conversation, no matter what. It is beautiful. So I am so excited. Big thanks to Sheila for the way that she showed up today, because it is so open and so immense and beautiful. So I'm very excited to get to today's show. I want to say thank you so much for being here. I'm so stoked about it and just us all growing together. So take a breath with me, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Thank you for being here. Thank yourself for showing up. Let's get to the show. This episode has been sponsored by Keen. Keen provides access to vetted psychics and spiritual advisors who provide guidance and insights on life's challenges, clarity in love, relationship, career, and more. It's also one of the most affordable ways to get an instant psychic reading by a professional at any time, 24/7. Y'all, I am trying Keen, and I'm going to let you know how it goes. Am I a little nervous? A little. Yeah, a little. But they provide access to vetted psychics and spiritual advisors. So they're providing insight into anything that you happen to be going through right now. And they're available 24/7. There's always someone available online, and you can easily schedule a call with an advisor. As a new customer, with the code that I'm about to give you, you will get your first 10 minutes for just $1.99. Pricing then depends on which advisor you choose, and the service are backed with a satisfaction guarantee. So Keen is Keen, just like it sounds, is the most affordable way to meet new advisors. And when you find the right advisor, you can develop an ongoing relationship with them that can lead to a number of benefits, including monthly intention setting. I'm into that. Gaining clarity on the significance of synchronicities. So into that. Chakra clearing. Totally into it. And anything else that you can think of, which I'm sure we can think of a lot on this show. So each week, Keen sends its users discounts on readings. And so it is a very affordable alternative to receive multiple psychic readings, which is kind of cool, because then you could be like, ooh, what if they all line up, right? If you are a current Keen user too, check your email to see this week's discounts. So if you'd like to try it, which I will be reporting back on that, you simply go to TryKeen, TryKeen.com/Amy Edwards, and that will get you your first 10 minutes for $1.99. Again, that code is TryKeen.com/Amy Edwards to check out Keen and virtual psychic readings. Yes, my Palo Santo is still lit. This is a habit. I just light it over and over. Sometimes when I'm talking to someone, I just, like, my hands go to it. I just want to light it up and just have the smell around all the time. I think I'm addicted to that smell. How are you? Taking a second, just recalibrating. I'm excited to share today's conversation with you, which we're going to get to. First things first, let's talk for a few minutes. I want to talk a little bit about how we frame things and how we approach things with our words. Y'all know I love me some words. There's that old book by Florence Scovel Shinn, I think it is. And it's called Your Word is Your Wand. And it is old. And I know I've talked about it before, but it is old. It's like 1920s. So it's written there needs to be an update, but it's kind of cute, but kind of like, okay. But the point is, I love the title, even just your word is your wand. You are casting magic spells straight out of your mouth with everything that you speak. So what are you speaking is the point. So this weekend, let me back up for a second. This weekend, I had some personal stuff go on, and I don't want to reveal too much because it's not really mine to reveal. And so anyway, I ended up feeling bad. I felt like I was affecting people in a negative way. And if there's one thing I hate, it's that I do not want to affect people negatively. I try to be a light, I try to bring my best self. I think y'all know that. That's why I'm here, right? Not to bring everybody down. And I had like a dark ass moment, especially on Saturday. And I felt like some stuff was coming up with my daughter, my ex-husband, and who's her dad. And just, it was a lot. My other ex-husband, it was a lot. And I just suddenly got really, really down on myself. I just started talking negatively to myself, telling myself that everything I touch just turns to shit. I was like, look, I married that person, and then, they weren't becoming their best self, and I leave them, hurt them more. Same thing happened the second time. Didn't make that person their best selves, didn't inspire them. Instead, just deteriorated. What am I doing wrong? And then I started saying, I'm clearly doing that to my children. I'm, everyone I touch, it's going down. Everything I touch is going down. I have debt. I have this and that, whatever it is. I started just like so down on it. And the underlying message was, everything you touch turns to shit, Amy. And I got really like heartbroken over that and saddened that I was going down that path. And, normally my confidant is Justin, and normally I call him, but he was at a speaking gig in California. And so he was occupied, and I really didn't want to bring him down while he was doing that. And so I waited to talk to him, and I thought, who can I call? And I think, man, so many times we can get in a dark moment. And when we're in a lighter moment, we're like, oh gosh, I have lots of people I could call. But when we're in a dark moment, you could look through all the names in your phone and you literally can think, I don't have anybody I can call. I don't have anybody that wants to hear this shit from me. If you've ever felt like that, like you just think, I might as well just sit here with it. And that's not true either. None of this is true. It's just lies that we tell ourselves. And even the person that we really desire to talk to about it, you know what? You're not laying your shit on them. Because I did end up calling him, and I said, call me when you can. He was like, is everything okay? And I'm crying. And I was like, it's not exactly. I sugarcoated it. And he called, and I said, I don't want to burden you with this right now. And he was like, you're not burdening me. Just tell me. And he's in such a solid place with recovery that it actually went really well. And he was like, you can tell me this at any time and I can handle it. It's okay. And so he talked me down a little bit or up, I guess. And so that helped. And I was able to give myself some time and space for the next few hours to sit, process, and just be. And that was a really good thing. I think I took a bath and I ate something I liked, and I watched some TV and just kind of had the time to recalibrate. And as time progressed just a little bit, like 12 hours really, I started to feel better. And I started to think about how all this could really be a blessing. Like, how can I reframe everything? How can I reframe whatever hard situation it is and choose to see it a different way? So that's where the word aspect gets into this. I think we look so many times at things like problems, obstacles, challenges. And a lot of times those are used in a positive context. Sure, like we have obstacles that we're going to overcome, whatever. But I don't know. You're still talking about having obstacles. And no matter what context you're talking about something in, you're still talking about it. I mean, if you're talking about not wanting shit, you're still talking about shit. Like, so how can you get that out of there? I was listening to Abraham Hicks just today, and Abraham was talking about a buffet. And so this is a metaphor for all of life. We go to a buffet and we're like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. And you're so focused on all these things you don't want. And then you're finally like, I will have that. That looks all right. But get all these other things out of here. They're making me uncomfortable. And then they keep bringing out more plates of the stuff you don't want. And you're like, I don't want those. But it's because you're focused on them. It's because your attention is on them. So even saying, I don't want that, you're still focused on that. So how do we change it? Like, if we're still saying obstacles, if we're still saying problems, if we're still saying, any of that, how can we switch it around in our own vernacular and make it a habit? And I had forgotten the habit. Or maybe I just needed that time. Maybe I needed that time to remember, or maybe I needed that time just to go through it, just to go through it a little bit. That's okay. I'm human. We all are human. We're all going to have those. So, okay, fine. I'll just be human for a little while, or all the time, really. Anyway, so how could I flip it around? And in the bigger picture, how can we flip around like that buffet or whatever we're talking about? So I was like, you know what? This is a really cool opportunity for all of us to get closer. This is a great opportunity to step up with my daughter. This is a great opportunity to figure out new patterns. See a pattern there too? This is an opportunity. I'm going to tell a little story too about when I was getting my first divorce. My first husband's mother, she was an absolutely wonderful person. She was Catholic and she was very dedicated to Catholicism and God. And she was just a wonderful, wonderful woman. But she took the divorce, or she took our separation news very, very hard. And she was mad at me. And which, again, we're human, right? I don't fault her for this at all. But I remember we had a conversation one day, a phone conversation, and she was like trying to make sense of it. And she was mad at me. And I didn't have all the tools I have now. I'm sure I probably didn't handle it right. But I can even remember where I was and everything. And this was like, at least 16 years ago, 15 years ago. And she said, she was just talking about the separation. And I said, you know what? This is an opportunity. So I guess I was already doing this kind of thing then. This is an opportunity for him and for me to, and she just jumped in and was like, I can't even believe you're calling this an opportunity. And I felt really bad. We didn't end that phone conversation well. I love her. We went on to have a nice relationship. She's a beautiful soul and she has passed, R.I.P. Sue. But I guess my point is that sometimes it's hard to see it as a reframe. That really stuck with me that, in a hard situation, sometimes people aren't ready to hear, this is an opportunity. So, it's something you can do for yourself in your own time when you're ready. And, I don't encourage pushing it on anybody, and I'm not pushing it on you right now, but I am saying our words have power. And how can we possibly look at things a little bit different, look at things as arising, as an opportunity, as a chance to grow, a chance to figure out a new solution. Like instead of I have a problem, I have an opportunity for a new solution. I get to find some new solutions. I get to figure this out. That feels good. Because even when you say we have a lot of challenges, I can feel myself go down a little bit. Try it. Say something out loud. Like, can you feel it go down a little bit? Like, oh, yeah, we've got a problem. I mean, you have to catch your breath almost a little bit. So if you say we have an opportunity for new solutions, it feels hopeful, feels exciting, kind of feels just good in general. So that's what I wanted to bring up today. And I did shift out of that pretty quickly into being able to look for new solutions. And other people might still be stuck in, no, there are no other solutions. You're crazy, whatever the hell. I don't know. That's not my concern. Nope, doesn't matter. I know how I'm going to view the situation. And I believe that when we view it those particular ways, we are affecting the situation with the attitude, with the positivity, with what we want to see in it, which is part of this whole quantum thing, right? Part of this whole quantum experience we're having, which everything, behaves in a way that is affected by the way we want it to behave, which is a whole nother thing we're going to get into next week. But okay, now today we are going to touch a tiny bit on quantum and a tiny bit on DNA, but the bigger picture is about the consciousness and soul in ketamine, specifically the psychedelic ketamine. It's a dissociative psychedelic, and we have the founder of Finding Metis here today. Her name is Dr. Sheila Grace Newsom. And I have known Sheila for quite some time and always had a good rapport with her. And so it has made me very excited to see her develop this business. It has been kind of recent. And she is a veteran, a military veteran. She's over 70 now. I can't remember how old exactly, but over 70, and went to West Point, served as an airborne ranger, and spent 22 years in private practice as a doctor focusing on nephrology and critical care. And then is also a recovering alcoholic, 29 years sober. Sheila has a lot under her belt, for sure. Another thing that she has under her belt is, I guess, I don't know, maybe I should use a different phrase, but anyway, is gender transition that she did late in life at age 68, which I just admire the hell out of that. That is so brave, but she doesn't even look at it as brave. She's like, I was called to do it. That's what I did. And wow, to heed a calling, right? And it feeds so much of what she does to help others. And she realized that no one was building a home concierge kind of ketamine ceremonial experience. And being a medical doctor and with all the other things that she's experienced, it's just a perfect match. And so that is what she's doing. I was fortunate enough to get to experience what she offers. So she came to my house, and they do it right wherever you want, really. But I did it in my bedroom. And if you've listened to this show for a while, you might know that I am pretty experienced with ketamine. I've done it in a clinical setting six times, I do believe, I did it in about 2020. I think that's correct, yes. And so I had not done it in a while, and I really liked the idea of not doing intravenously, because that's what we did in the clinical setting, but doing intramuscular, which is just a shot in my leg. And I liked the idea of doing it at home where you feel safe. And so I did. I'm terrified before I do any psychedelic too. You should know that. Absolutely terrified. Sometimes I cry because I'm so scared that I'm going to lose my mind. But so far, well, I suppose that's arguable, but I don't think I have. So Sheila sits there with you, monitors the entire experience, monitors you, but brings so much more to that. Sheila provides a really sacred experience for this, which in a clinical setting can be missing, or you would have to do yourself. Instead, there's a prayer. There's a calling to the goddess Metis, who we're going to talk about today. Super cool mythology around that. And you feel safe and held in a way where you feel like your soul can really do the work. And that's what you're there for, really, to heal and to do the soul work, whatever it is that needs to be done. And it came, she did this for me right at a time when I needed it. If you've been listening to this show at all, it was right in, let's see, Justin had just relapsed and I was really confused. And so I was leaning into this self-trust thing that I spoke about probably on the episode with Angie back in November. And so Angie Heil, if you haven't listened to that one, it's fantastic. And so I did a series of 3, probably each one maybe a couple weeks apart or 10 days, something like that. So I just feel so grateful to Sheila for providing me with this experience, because I don't exactly remember what happened, but I did see my chakras break open. I did feel better afterward. And ultimately, I was big picture working on self-trust, and my life broke open in a way where I was forced to trust myself. So be careful what you wish for, because you'll get it. So anyway, I was able to really, really find that self-trust in a whole new way that I didn't expect. And I think that this was an integral part of how I was able to navigate all of that in a way that, I was going to say peaceful just then. It wasn't really peaceful. I suppose I was peaceful in my anger to a certain extent. I mean, I had unpeaceful moments too, but I think I was able to just navigate it in a way of understanding that it was all there for my growth, rather than from a place of like, this is happening to me, blame, whatever, why, Instead, I was really able to dive into like, what can I gain from this? Which goes right back to those words, like, how can I view this differently? What can I gain from this? That's a cool way to look at it, right? Instead of instead of throwing around accusations or feeling like you're losing something. Okay. So I'm very excited to get to today's conversation. You're going to learn so much. You are going to learn all about the history of ketamine. You are going to learn about Sheila's own personal journey with gender transition, and just a few years ago, and her ketamine experience, how it came into her life and how things find us when we need them. You're also going to hear a lot about a soul consciousness in this psychedelic and the wisdom that is underneath it and what it can bring to our unconscious, our subconscious. She's a big fan of Carl Jung, and about reading our astrology charts, which is a cool combo, right? And the patterns that we can find within that and how we can use those. So I'm very excited to share this conversation with you today. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And there's also we talked too about how the ketamine experience spills over for her when she's in that setting, right? It's all about how tuned in we are and the reverence that she gives to this medicine too, in a shamanic way. Really cool. So I'm so excited. Those are not spoilers. They're just like a little appetizer of what's to come, because it's so good. So I just want to say thank you so much to Sheila for this incredible conversation. Stay till the end. I'm trying to do an affirmation every single episode. So we will have an affirmation and a tiny little wrap up. And I just want to say thank you to you for being here. So let's get to today's conversation with Finding Metis founder, Dr. Sheila Grace Newsom. So one of the things I really appreciate about you, Sheila, is your attention to ritual and how you approach what you do with Metis, with ketamine, as a ritual, and you honor it, and it's ceremonial. So beautiful.
Thank you.
So I've been trying to do some more of that. As I started this show, I did that. So I just thought for us today, it would be really nice to open that way. I'm going to light a little Palo Santo, which I usually do. We have an amethyst sitting here in the bowl with us, which if you're watching,
we've got
on
one
YouTube,
here too.
And you've got one there too. And I've got one around my neck. Actually, this is an ametrine I have right here. But so, and that is about transformation, the amethyst, which I think I'm all about transformation. You're all about transformation. There's something to just.
Oh, Amy, we're all about transition.
Yeah. Transition, transformation.
Thank you.
I mean, making life what we want. So I just was curious if maybe you would like to say a little prayer, or we could set an intention together.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Just make sure we can hear you in the microphone, because this is part of it.
Okay.
All right, good. We're holding hands.
Goddess, God, Spirit, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Guide us, guard us, protect us, educate us, lift us up and ground us. Show us the things that we need to do, the things that we need to be. Show us the right people, the right places, right things, right time, right timing, right resources. Love us.
Oh, lift us up and ground us. Beautiful.
Thank
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought that would be a really nice way, because so many times we're unintentional about so many things we do. At least I have been. And I'm constantly encouraging people to get intentional about whatever it is that we're doing.
I really see that as kind of a centering point for me.
Yeah.
And
did you come into that?
Work that I'm doing. No, Amy, most of this I've learned, after I began this gender transition late in life was one thing.
How old were you for that?
I started really in earnest at 68.
Yeah. Wow. I admire that so much, because that takes so much bravery.
It was a calling, and, once you hear a call, and that's what you know it as. And I did, and I fought it for a long time. And, I did not have a lot of support, from the people that I loved for a lot of good reasons.
People like things the way they are.
It was just so radical. I mean,
right.
How could, living life as an alpha male for 60 plus year, retired, sitting on a porch in a retirement home in the West Indies. And I hear a voice clearly that says, Sheila, you're a woman and always have been. So, I didn't really know what to do with that. I tried to avoid it, tried to run away from it, tried to do a lot of things to it, but it stayed. And so it was really when I began to experience this dysphoria, this uneasiness about who I was outside versus inside. I'd had glimpses of that through my life, but this came on full bore. And so I really knew what suicidality felt like. I had suicidal ideation, and it was very clear. And, I got very close in 2015 to doing that, and went back down to our vacation home and had a plan to commit suicide. And one night I was, the night before, I was standing out under the moon, and I said, this is it. And, I heard that voice again, that deep voice, and it said, you do what you need to do. This is free will. And there are people that could be helped by what you do in your walk that will never be able to experience that. And so I knew that was kind of the judgment. I knew that was kind of what was going to sit on my heart and soul. And so I woke up the next morning and said, I've got work to do. So but the main thing is that honoring the call always has consequences, and that's the main take home is that there's nothing easy about that, and that if it comes late in life, there's so many other ways to patch over that, to walk through and just leave it there.
Sure.
And for me, fortunately or unfortunately, it was about something as deep as gender. And gender it raises so many questions about so many things, and it's an intersecting point in so many ways that once I gave into that and exploration of it and really began to understand that there were other people out there that had the same sort of experience that I did, then I realized, I've got to do this. Mm-hmm. And so I committed to it, and that's made all the difference.
That's so good.
Well, it is what it is.
Well, I part of my whole platform is about doing anything at any age. And man, are you ever a representative of that? I mean, that's why I'm just like, you're so entrenched in your life at that point, and like to uproot things. I mean, it's got to keep you younger, I would think. Doesn't it feel like revitalizing in some way, or has it been like aged you?
I'm a young woman. I am a young woman, and I see myself in those times.
I love that. Well, you are. I mean, you really are.
Well, that's kind of an anomaly in that I'm also the oldest woman graduate from West Point. So
I guess so.
There are several folks that would deny me that privilege, but by class and rank and all, I'm the oldest woman graduate. And the one thing is, I've stayed involved at West Point, and I think that's become kind of a focal point for what I'd like to really. If I got rained on with a lot of resources to go back and to help women and diversity at West Point. And so I've stayed involved with the development committee there for 7 or 8 years now, and gone back as transgender, as who I am. And I've had some really wonderful people there that have stepped forward and said, "Hey, how can we help?" And then there have been others that were really not understanding, but willing to listen. So it always helps me to go back into that setting to help retell my story. And I think that the more I retell the story, the more it resonates with people. And the West Point thing is a very easy story to tell to other West Point graduates, in that I say, nobody ever came through those gates on the first day of July, their plebe year, without being called. You know what a calling means. And so whether or not they're extroverted thinkers or introverted intuitives, it doesn't make any difference. They got called. And they went through, and that calling made a difference not only at West Point, but in the Army and in their life afterwards. And so that's all I say is, this is the same thing that happened to me later in life in the same way with the same voice. And so it was a calling. And, once you've felt that calling, it resonates at a deep, deep place. I mean, I think it's that soul calling that we're all looking for, or we're looking to avoid, and or both.
Or both. Yeah.
So,
we want it, but we want it to be this.
Yes.
I've made up my mind what the calling should be. I was like, no, you don't get to choose.
That you don't understand. I mean,
right.
And that's the place that I launched from. But the other part about this is that, so in the next 4 to 5 years, I mean, the changes that had to occur in family, the growth that had to come from them was amazing. And so the real heroes are my family members, and we live apart, and I'm still married to a best friend.
I wondered. I didn't know if you had gotten a divorce.
We started down that road, and then it just wasn't the right step. But
wow.
I was over there yesterday, and we were talking about serious things, and then we were laughing, and there's such a shared history. But the growth that my wife had to accommodate whenever I said, this is who I am, this is who I have to be, then then she shepherded my two girls through it as well. And so, it's been hard, but what I realized is, Amy, I don't think we ever fully realize what images we carry for others that we're close to, that we love. And so that the energy and image that I was for those strong, loving, lovely women is something that I only learned about in retrospect. And so, but now I understand what we carry for each other. And so when that shifts to some great degree, usually it shifts at death. Mm-hmm. And that's the only time that we really feel it, or at loss, or separation or divorce or whatever, when there's a real radical shift. But when there's still a bond that has not been broken, then to see growth around the ability to accommodate a change in image. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what I've seen. I learned about it in my 2 years as studying for a master's in depth psychology. When
did you do that?
I did that between 2019 and I finished last August.
So cool. Wow.
Well, the thing, it was let me just say this. I've had the resources to do this.
You've been a doctor for your whole life, basically.
And, I committed to this with resources. And so the facial feminization, the breast augmentation, the vocal surgery, the clothes, the this and that. Most of those things were not what were offered to the transgender men and women I was seeing at Kind Clinic. Mm-hmm. And I volunteered over there for a year. And it's a wonderful,
it is.
It's a wonderful mm-hmm. place, and a place to go. But the thing is that I got to a point in all of this, and I was looking for some way to explain what happened to me, because if it happened to me, certainly it happened to somebody else. But this late in life, it was just really an awkward thing. But obviously it happens with others.
Oh my gosh. And people go to their grave never doing
it. And they do. They do. Mm-hmm. When I look at some of my family members that, you can tell when people don't honor that calling or can't. They just get older. They get more worn. And I think that, when the soul realizes that it's not going to be able to do what it needs to do or wants to do or feels called to, that it begins to move inward in some way. I think life knows that. And so I think changes follow after that.
Yeah, it takes a toll. For sure.
It does.
If you're not going to follow the soul calling and you're just going to push it down and push it down.
Yep.
And I feel like I've done that in my own life. I've had times when I've done that, of course. I think everybody does, we all have times and you look back and think, oh, if only I had, just been quicker to pay attention to what my intuition was telling me, but it's okay. It's part of learning. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up about that. But I hope people can look at you and hear your story and, be inspired to let go a little bit, because you don't know who you're inspiring at that point. I love what that voice said to you. There is work to do, and you living your purpose, living your calling is going to help someone, period. Go do it, whatever it is.
Well, Amy, you forget, you and I had lunch back in 2018, mm-hmm. maybe.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I knew your story mm-hmm. from the outside looking in. So seeing you doing this, really helped me and has helped me.
That's so kind.
So, it's the truth.
And it surprises me. And thank you. That makes me feel so good.
You were sitting on that porch in that vacation home.
I have been to that
You've
vacation
been
home. I
there.
bought it in an auction for Austin Film Society once and went to Nevis. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you know what that looks like. and
Yeah,
what it
I know
feels
exactly
like.
where you were. It's kind of cool to know where you walk down. There are conch shells everywhere. It's amazing.
And, to hear that call through all of that, I think, we get wrapped up in what we have and what we think we are.
What we think we are.
What we think we are.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's a beautiful book by C.S. Lewis.
Love C.S. Lewis.
And Till We Have Faces.
I've never heard of it.
It's his telling of a remarkable myth. And myths are those recurring energy patterns that have been here since the beginning of time. But the myth of Amor and Psyche. Amor is Cupid, the god.
Mm-hmm.
Psyche is the queen, and she weds him, but he tells her there's only one thing that she can have everything in the world, everything that she wants, but she just can't look at his face. So it's always in the dark. Well, of course, she takes the next step and with the help of her sisters, creeps over one night and with the lantern sees this beautiful face. It's a face of a god. But oil drips down. He wakes up, the party's over, and she's cast out into the world. So Psyche then spends the rest, the major part of her life going through the labors. And so I think that's ultimately she makes amends to Cupid's mother, Aphrodite's. Everybody is happy. She becomes a goddess and they have a big party. But the thing is that I think we all have something living through us from the very start. Some daimon, some angel, some force that lives us. And we, our ego, this little thing that tries to monitor everything, keeps telling us, no, not this, not that, yes, this. And yet in spite of that, we're lived forward. And I mean, I like that image that until we have a face that's manifested through living psyche, then we don't really know who we are. The world doesn't know who we are. And we certainly can't wed to the highest, to the Godhead.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to think that, we each are living that image of something that psyche wants to bring forward in the world. And it's always unique. But that takes me away from having to judge. You shouldn't do this. You ought not to do that. Don't judge. Don't compare. Stay in your life. And I think those are really resonant points for me, is just having something living through me, I think is a good way of putting the ego to the side. And it's a daily thing. I mean, it's just a daily
I
deal.
like that.
Yeah.
I read something, I think, a long time ago or a little while back. And it was like, how people say life is happening to me. Life is not happening to you. Life is happening for you.
Yeah.
But I saw it taken one step further. It was like life is happening to me. And then you move into life is happening for me. And then you move into life is happening through me.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. And, now I've been in recovery for
long time.
29 years next week.
Hey.
But it's a daily deal. I mean, I do the same things today. I did today what I did the day I left treatment. And, the first 10 years or so, I didn't go till I was 42. But the thing is that I was so afraid the first couple of years, I just didn't want to go back. I had a roommate that had been there. I was there for 6 months at a residential treatment center in Atlanta. But I had a suite mate who on the way home after 9 months drank. I had another sweet mate that shot himself 2 weeks after he left treatment.
Dude, oof.
And the chances that they gave physicians for staying sober over a long period of time were pitiful. I mean, they were like 1 in 37 or 38.
Wow.
And I had family that had stuck with me. I had kids I had yet to help birth a beautiful woman who has always known me as sober. Mm-hmm. And so, but the main thing was I was afraid. Then after that, once you get to a point where you can feel that something is working through you, it's a shift in consciousness. And that's the whole thing. It's a shift in consciousness. That happened for me extremely early. And it is, I think, the miracle of what recovery is it's a miracle that the compulsion to kill ourselves gets taken away. Mm-hmm. But it's a daily reprieve based on the maintenance of a spiritual condition.
I'm seeing it firsthand right
I
now.
know you are.
I'm in it.
I know you are. Yeah.
Do you think, I would think that surviving that, going through that at 42, no less, saying I'm an alcoholic and going to treatment for as long as you did, which was 6 months, and being honest about that, I would think that would positively impact you when you make a transition, like your gender transition. I would think that would probably put you in a mindset of like, this too I shall survive, Well, would you say so? It strengthened you?
It does. I mean, it did. And I mean, that's the cornerstone of everything else. I mean, if I'm not sober, nothing else works. So, that was built in.
Did you feel like relapsing when you got the call about like?
No, to be honest with you, I've just, the compulsion to use got taken away. And that's
so amazing. That's so good.
Well, it's a gift. And that's what I realized.
Really cool.
So, I mean, I do the things that they told me to do. And, I prayer and meditation every day. You do read the readings, help others that are alcoholic. And so, I mean, I think the principles are pretty clear. So, but the things that served me in that are the same things that I relearned in transition.
Yeah.
So but the age difference was remarkable. And the other thing is that what I was trying to do was not really clear. All I knew is something in here wanted to come out in a form of consciousness, and it wanted something exterior to prove that. Mm-hmm. So it was more a change in consciousness than it was a movement towards some gendered objective. That just happened to be what wanted to move through. And so it was really a change in consciousness. And
okay. Well, let's talk about a change in consciousness for a minute.
Right. Yeah.
Or a lot of minutes. So let's talk about ketamine. How did ketamine come into your life initially even? And did you have any other psychedelic experience? I'm curious.
No, I never did. And in my history, psychedelics were just not part of my use pattern. I mean, I guess,
you went to West Point and stuff. I don't think there's a lot of people dropping acid and stuff.
No, and I didn't have a long history, even with marijuana, cocaine. I mean,
you were recovering from alcohol, correct?
Alcohol,
mostly.
But I mean, I was one of those that would take anything that showed up.
Yeah, sure.
And so it
Justin's like that.
It just hadn't. Yeah, I mean, it just hadn't showed up yet. Mm-hmm. So, but my drinking really was it's an odd pattern in that it started heavily at 35, almost like that. And I can actually point to a weekend my wife could verify, where I got off a call and went and bought liquor. And I mean, I never had drunk hard liquor. But somebody gave me a glass of Chivas and 7-Up at a party, and I drank it, and it changed the way I felt. And from that moment on, that was at 35, from that moment on, I was off on a race. And it took me about 7 years. But the other thing is, though, Amy, is that the miracles that have occurred in my life were gifts. And so I was flying back from the Super Bowl. My mother had died, my brother and father, and I went to the Super Bowl, Cowboys and Bills, in the Rose Bowl in 1993. They played the Bills. And so we went to celebrate her. She had died the month before, and we went to celebrate we were all Cowboy fans, or are Cowboy fans, and so a good friend had a plane, so we flew out to San Diego and stayed there. Then flew up for the game, flew back that night. Flying back, full moon, 1st of February of 1993 was the last beer that I drank, and that was it. But on the way back to my hometown, the plane was supposed to be full. It was a private plane, but there were only 2 of us that showed up to fly back that next morning. And about halfway through, a guy that I'll owe my life to turned to me and said, and I didn't know him, and he said, "I want to tell you, I'm an alcoholic, and I want to tell you how I got sober." And within an hour and a half, he told me his story. Now, so that when I got off the plane, I drove home and sat down with my wife and said, "I'm an alcoholic. I need to go to treatment."
She was probably like, "I know."
And you know what that conversation sounds like. But the thing is that I was planning on going to the bar as I got on that plane. So for somebody to sit there in the middle of that and turn to me and say, "I'm an alcoholic," that's just some of that divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's no other way that I can frame that. But I've just been the fortunate recipient of divine intervention. I remember driving 90 miles an hour between Andrews and Lubbock and passing out.
From drinking?
From drinking.
Wow. And
I wake up, I'm off the side of the road. I'm a foot from a 40-foot drop off. And somehow I'd woken up or put on the brakes, or something had stopped the car. I should have been dead.
Wow. So
I knew, in another way, not with hubris, but just this deep sense that, hey, life wants more from you, and life is giving you a lot of resources. So what are we going to do about it?
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Well, so how did ketamine find you?
So ketamine, then, I began after fairly recently, within the last year, I began to have feelings around suicidality again. That began to creep back in, even after, a long term of transition.
Why do you think?
I think it's built into the process. I do.
Really?
I do. I think that,
built into which process? Coming into? Okay.
I think whatever transgender is, I think has built into it some real sharp edges.
Well, plus an old you is really dying.
Yep.
So that might just seep into something. I don't know.
But here's the thing, is that 41% of all transgender men and women try to commit suicide at some point in time. Most all of us think about it at some point in time. Alcoholics, you put those in another group, and that's pretty high. Physicians 1 in 7 physicians commit suicide.
Holy shit.
So they told me that the first day of medical school. And so, my risk.
Is that still true?
I can't tell you that. Wow. I think they've got a lot more tools now that they offer people that help them. But the thing is, I think it's built into I think it's a brain pattern. And I think that's the mystery. Why do some people, I've got suicidality in my family. And so, but who,
my grandfather killed himself. I would guess I do too.
And
it was like a family secret.
I have close family members who have committed suicide, and it's a bullet that keeps traveling. But why were they driven to that? And so that's what got me back in. I had a lovely psychiatrist / therapist who was beginning to use ketamine-associated assisted therapy, and mentioned to me, why don't we try ketamine? And so...
Did you talk to this person and say, I'm having suicidal ideation?
Yeah, this was somebody that I'd been in therapy with.
So you spoke up about it. That's good.
Well, I knew what it felt like. I mean, I knew when that rumbling comes back, I knew what to do. The main thing is that secrets kill. And it's the same thing in recovery. So, I mean, that's one thing that I've always hung on to.
You're only as sick as your secrets is what they say.
Exactly. And so, I mean, that I knew that if I was going to sit on that the chances of something wrong happening
would just go increasing, right?
Yeah, they would. They would. And, once I began to think about specifics and things like that, then I knew that it was time. So he said, I'm having some real success with ketamine. So I said, well, I don't know anything about it. I knew about it as an anesthetic agent.
Where does ketamine come from?
Well, it started out in the 1960s.
Okay.
It's a synthetic agent that was created in the early 60s for a specific reason. It was a dissociative anesthetic that was used to inject in shocky soldiers who had been wounded on the battlefield.
Okay.
It put them out long enough to get them back to the mobile hospital, and within 45 minutes to an hour. So that's what it was developed for. And so the medics all carried ketamine syringes. And it was interesting that with the tens of thousands that were wounded and received it, that there was no cardiac suppression and there was no respiratory suppression. So these were shocked soldiers who had been wounded and were bleeding, getting back to the MASH unit. And what they noticed is that many of them complained of a psychedelic experience while they were under. And so they began to think that was a side effect, and that's why they listed it as such.
They're like, how annoying, I was tripping.
Then somebody looped around in the 1990s. Stan Groff and some other forward-thinking physicians began to experiment because they also found and it recorded that some of the soldiers who had been wounded and had the psychedelic experience also felt some degree of lightness and less depression and were less prone to PTSD. So that's where things really began to take off in the early 1990s. And fortunately, and I think this was because somebody in Big Pharma wanted to develop this. And so for some reason, ketamine got left off of the class 1 list that they shoved all the other psychedelics into to
Amazing.
Class 3.
Wow.
And Class 3 is a class that would include like Tylenol with codeine.
Wow.
So it's prescribable. And the other thing is that in the early 1990s, with smaller doses, you can get high.
Yeah, I remember doing some in the 90s, like in a club with people or something like that. I didn't know what it was, but I remember people talking about it. I remember trying a little bit of it. And I just like to say, I don't think ketamine's a party drug. So,
well,
if you want to like not talk in good sentences and things like that, then great, go for it. But, and you don't really feel like moving around a lot. Like, I don't think it's at least in my experience, not a great party drug.
Well, and I mean, the thing is that now with intranasal ketamine that's available, they talk about microdosing with ketamine, and
I've tried it.
That's the danger that I see.
Yeah, I heard that it can be addictive, and I don't know. I found myself kind of getting addicted to it because I started using it in the pandemic intranasally, and I was I don't know. I just found myself using it more than I should. And I could tell I wasn't thinking right when I was using it. Right. And I was like, not like making full associations. And if I spoke to someone, I wasn't speaking as well as I did. Anyway, I was like, I don't think this is beneficial.
Well, and if you look at the addictive patterns, the addictive profile of ketamine, it's not classic. So, it's not something that you go way up and come way down with dopamine.
Okay.
So it doesn't operate just in that system. So the research they began to do around it, they realized there were multiple pathways that ketamine worked in. And so that made it separate from the SSRIs, the SNRIs, et cetera, that they were using for depression. So it had a little different pathway. What they then began to find in studies at NYU and that were really well done in 2008, 9, and 10 with Dr. Stephen Levine is that in the right dosing pattern, that you could reconstruct, you could guarantee a psychedelic experience. And it seemed as if the psychedelic experience was the thing that was the healing presence.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was the way that it was explained to me. So they said, okay, if we give you the right amount, then that will guarantee a psychedelic experience. If we give you 5 to 10 times that month, then it's a general anesthetic. And so you can go to the ER with a broken wrist, and they can give you ketamine at a little higher dose than what I'm using. And you can sit there and watch, your wrist being manipulated that's broken. The sensation, you're disassociated.
Yes.
But so so with suicidality present, I was given ketamine in a physician's office. And so my physician and an assistant sat there and watched me under, very comforting conditions. And I went all the way in, all the way down. The only thing that I can say about that first experience was that there was a voice of some sort that said, if you're going to come in, you've got to give up the idea of who you think you are. And so all I had to do was say yes in some way. And then I went off into a really different set of realities, and the textures, the colors, the everything were just extremely unique and different. Once I
Did you close your eyes? And
I had a blindfold on, and so, but I don't think the depth of that experience that it would have made much difference. I just knew that I was separate from whoever it was that I thought that I was. And that lasted for about 45 minutes, and then I woke up. And it took a little while to get reoriented. But the thing is that when I woke up and finally got through that early haze, that's associated with that goes away fairly quickly, I realized that my suicidality was gone. I mean, it was just gone. And so there's a book called The Ketamine Papers that's kind of a summary of all the research.
I've heard of that.
It's a really well done book. And through 2016, all of the studies that have been done around ketamine are referenced there. But it's pretty common that it works in that way with suicidality. It's not foolproof, and there are no double-blind studies that you can do around suicide. I mean,
right.
You just don't. So my feeling was then I had a dream, and in the dream, I knew that it was time to get out of school and to start getting back to work in some shape, form, or fashion. It was just a very clear set of images, and I was versed enough in my dream work that I really paid attention to it. And so, starting in August, I began to kind of just intuit, what would be a way for me to help others. I didn't want to go back to traditional medicine. I'd been retired for 10 years from a complicated subspecialty. I just didn't feel competent to get back. And especially with COVID and everything else, so I put two and two together and I thought, wait a second, there's nobody that's offering to screen thoroughly based on physical and emotional parameters, mental health things, and then go to somebody and administer ketamine. And to do that on a recurrent basis, and to make a practice around that. So that's what led to Finding Metis. The reason I named it Metis is that a lot of the depth psychology that I was doing and studying is based on myth, because those are the primitive stories that come from the archetypes or the patterns of energy that have been with us for forever. But Metis was the goddess, Greek goddess of wisdom, and she isn't really known well. She was one of the first three goddesses, the primary goddesses, but Zeus swallows her very early because he's afraid of her power. That's the myth. So the wisdom that comes from Zeus is really Metis in his belly. So they have Metis was a figure that I was attracted to. Also, Zeus and Metis have a daughter that comes out of Zeus's head, and that's Athena.
Okay.
So Athena is kind of the patron goddess of West Point. I mean, her helmet is on everything. So the mythology had found me at an early point in time. So I thought, okay, if there is a consciousness in what I'm doing, it needs to be something based through Metis. And so that's why we picked Metis. To call it that, because of the consciousness of wisdom. And it's not, I don't see it as a wisdom as being smarter than, it's that cleverness. It's that ability to work and move in a way in which you're adapting to the world and to circumstances to align with things. And so that's the way that I approach the use of this now. And what I've come to find, you've participated with this.
Yes, I have.
With me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't know is that how important the container was, that you and I, me as physician, healer, the other person as participant, shamans for 30,000 years have known that there is something that connects you and me in that healing capacity. And there's a vessel that's formed. They've called it certain things, different things in the past, but there's really a vessel that's created between me and you in which something healing can come through. And so that's what I've seen now in miraculous ways at times, is that by having an awareness of the consciousness of the psychedelic, bringing it into this space, you and the drug, you and Metis have your own experience. I'm just helping to constellate a vessel and to give this safely and to make sure that your trip, that you're safe as you journey.
Do you treat the drug with reverence, like the entire time you have it in your possession?
I use it. I treat it like that. I mean, I treat it like something sacred, and I think that it is.
I think that's missing in a lot of ways from it in other clinical settings, or could be. Like, are they treating it with reverence? That's really interesting, because I know that like shamanic type medicines, whether we're talking about ayahuasca or mushrooms or whatever, they do for sure.
Well, and I think that's something that I strongly believe in. I mean, and either you believe it or you don't. And some of the people that I work with, don't inherently believe that. But it's kind of like going back to the very start of AA. All I say is, listen, you don't have to believe anything that I'm telling you. Just be willing to have a belief. So if they even have the willingness, then it seems that's enough of an opening to allow whatever comes through to come through.
Yeah. Are you thinking about fitness goals in 2022? I know, who isn't? Fitness, wellness goals, it's important. But you know what? Sometimes it's about hormone health. I am speaking from experience on this because it can be very confusing going down the hormone health road. So let's make it easier for ourselves. And that's why I'm excited to be partnering with Let's Get Checked to promote their PCOS test. So PCOS is a hormone problem that interferes with women's reproductive systems. It's the most common hormonal disorder among women of reproductive age, and it can lead to weight gain and obesity and feeling sluggish, right? So millions of women have PCOS, and it's estimated that up to 75% of women with PCOS remain undiagnosed when visiting with their doctor. Wild, right? So if you're struggling to lose weight or dealing with acne or mood disorders, then this is something to consider. Trying a PCOS test from our video sponsor, Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is the leader in at-home testing, and it's so easy. Here's how it works. You just go to their website, order the PCOS testing kit, which I'm going to have a discount code at the end, so stick around. And it arrives at your door in a small, discreet package, so no one has to know. If you, I don't know, I wouldn't care, but just in case you do. From there, you do a finger prick, a little saliva sample, and you send it back to their lab with a prepaid shipping label. And in 2 to 5 days, you get your results completely online. And if necessary, a nurse will contact you for consultation over the phone. It is super affordable, it's confidential, and you can do it all from home. I love that about this evolving healthcare these days. Their labs are CLIA approved and CAP accredited, which are the highest levels of accreditation. And it's HIPAA compliant, which means that your data is never shared with anyone and it's completely confidential. So you can't improve your health unless you measure your health. So don't let your hormones hold you back. Check your levels, get 30% off. How cool is that? At TryLGC, that's Let's Get Checked, trylgc.com/Amy. And then there's a code you can enter. It's Amy30, AMY30. How easy is that? For 30% off your entire order, that's trylgc.com/Amy. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp. They are online professional therapy securely done. And yes, I have tried it. And yes, I've had breakthroughs there. So check this out. If something's interfering with your happiness, your goals, preventing you from achieving your goals, guess what? It's okay to need professional therapy because sometimes that steps in and can make all the difference. I have been so surprised. I know. Why should I be surprised? But I have been. Anyway, it's really cool because they have some amazing features that are very, very easy to use. One, you can start communicating with someone in under 48 hours. Two, they have a broad range of expertise that may not be available in your area. Three, if you don't gel with your therapist, you can switch therapists, no questions asked. They don't care about that. They don't give a shit if you want to switch therapists. You just do it. And they are interested. What they do care about is finding a really good therapeutic match for you, which I think is super rad. And actually, I did that. I did switch once. So you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. You don't have to go to an uncomfortable waiting room. And here's the best part. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available if you need it. That's how committed they are at BetterHelp. Very cool. They want you to start living a happier life today. So join the over 1 million people who've already taken charge of their mental health at BetterHelp. Simply go read their reviews if you want to at BetterHelp. That's HELP.com/reviews. And then go cash in on our offer, which gives you 10% off of your first month at BetterHelp.com. Simply go to BetterHelp.com/AES for Amy Edwards Show, and you will get 10% off of your first month. Take charge of your mental health with me and many, many others. BetterHelp.com/AES. And I was just thinking about how everything, even if you're not going to call it a consciousness necessarily, everything does have an energy.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about things like cocaine, for instance. Like, think about the energy that is in that you're putting in your body. Really, like what went through with this cocaine? Like, how many people died? Like, how much blood is on it? Like, where did it come from? What was going on? Was it around guns? Was it around, like what was going on energetically with that? And I don't know. I haven't really thought of it like that, but I think that's a really interesting way to approach it.
Well, I think it's important because if we don't think of the realities that you can go into with any of the psychedelics,
big time.
I mean, and so
it's infinite
trips,
infinite
trips. So I think anchoring the reality to something, anchoring it within this vessel is really important. And the shamans, the priests, knew that for forever. I mean, that's where ritual had its primary effect in anchoring this sense of spirit into a certain container, certain vessel. I mean, think of Mass. I mean, the transubstantiation of wine and bread into blood and flesh. And if you've been to a really good high Mass with a priest that's extremely clued into it, you feel like something has changed, that there is a change in consciousness. I'm not a priest, and yet, I'm functioning as a shaman.
Yeah, you are.
Of sorts.
I mean,
so
you might be a priestess. There might be some priestess going on there.
Well, and I would, I honor it. I mean, in that, in my, my prayer and meditation, I ask for guidance and know that something is working through me in this direction. And so, I think that's an important part of what I'm doing. I don't think that the scientific work that's being done, especially for mushrooms and MDMA and all, I think those all have their place, especially with the number of traumatized veterans that we have. And I'm a veteran as well, and with transgender. But what I am afraid of is that if we don't watch out, then we're going to make psychedelics into something like Prozac was in the early 90s.
I think a lot of people are fearful of that right now, as Big Pharma kind of gets their claws into.
Well, and it's not hard to do. I mean, Big Pharma then gets linked up with big government, and then regulation gets to be a part, and then it's
They're like, we're going to make all the money off this, and we're going to lobby for it and all that.
So, and that's kind of in another world that I operate. I mean, I have to stay current in what in my hours of education. I have insurance. I have to have a license. I have to keep track of everything. And that's part of being in medical practice. And the thing is that going to a person and doing this,
because we did it in my bedroom, my bed. I want to I'll talk more about it in the intro too. Just tell the story of that, or I can tell it now if you want. But yes, we did it in that setting. Like, do you have to do something special medically to get certified to go to people's homes, or is that like choice kind of?
No, but after 30 years of working, especially in death and dying, I was used to dealing in all sorts of situations, intimate situations, in which family was there, and all sorts of emotional states. There was somebody there that was moving through the latter part of life. So I felt after 30 years of working with people, and after 2 years of studying depth psychology and doing a lot of work there with in a lot of different ways, I felt like I had the capacity where there weren't a lot of situations where I would feel awkward. The other thing is that I knew that after our initial exchange online, there's a feeling that you can get about somebody.
You mean when we were talking about doing this show, but I was like, let's do the ketamine first or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that, and then we did.
I just wanted to try your process,
Well, and
thank you for that.
So we did the hour interview.
You were yes, we did the hour interview, and then you were very generous and we did 3 ketamine sessions, which I'm immensely grateful for.
Well, the other thing is that I think that's a little different from what I do. I mean, the hour and a half that we spend in going through that, walking through the process, making sure from a mental and emotional standpoint, I got an idea of your history. And then the other things, 2 other things I do. One, I look at an astrology chart.
That's right. Yes.
And that's another way. Carl Jung cast charts on all of his patients.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's the reason
You've been into it for a long time too, right?
About 20 years.
Yeah.
And so a mentor, physician of mine way back, taught me the basics. And so it's a language, but it's like a weather pattern. The thing is that there are a couple of different movements of energy patterns that are in here. They're not out there. They are out there. They're in here as well. But there are patterns that I can look at and tell something is going on here. And so I may not have specifics around it, but there are certain movements that are common to us all. And so I can tell a lot about that. Plus, I have people do a typology test, and it tells me the Briggs-Myers are the 4. We all have 4 functions, and there are what we use to navigate consciousness, and there's thinking and feeling and sensation and intuition. And each of those, we have an extroverted or into the world view, and then an introverted or interior view. And all of us have those 8. The 4 that we know of as our what's your type, I'm an INFJ. You are something different. You're an ENFP.
Yes.
And
I've changed in the last 30 years.
And that movement can be so dramatic that you can have shifting in that way. But the thing is that I'm interested not only, there's been a lot of research done over the last 30 years about the unconscious functions, those not that we use consciously, but the ones that remain in the unconscious. And I'm of the belief that those unconscious ones are the ones that we project onto others and onto other situations. So it gives me an idea. I don't have many sensate thinkers, extroverted sensate thinkers that come to me. Most everybody that I'm treating has intuition and feeling functions that are highly active. And so it's just something that I notice. Now, the ones that do have sensate thinking tendencies, then my approach to them is a little bit different. I've got to convince them in a different way because intuition and feeling are all about what we're talking about here. That's a different function. The other thing is that what seems to be the gate between conscious and unconscious is something that Jung did a lot of work around, which was what he called the inferior function, but it's the fourth level, and that's where the anima and animus energy that we all have, which he called the soul. That soul energy that's kind of the fire behind everything that we do, that's actually the thing that can block us or welcome us into those lower realms. And manifestation and fleshing out those lower functions that we project on others is a lifetime process, but that's that process of individuation, becoming who you really are, comes from those lower realms, can come from those lower realms. And so
what do you mean exactly when you say lower realms?
Lower realms are the unconscious.
The unconscious.
The unconscious. And so think of it this way. Ego and the unconscious. You call it God, goddess, self.
Source. Okay.
Whatever. But ego comes out of this.
Okay.
It forgets some way between very early. It has to mature and set up its own drama. Trauma of all sorts then separates this further and further. And so this thing begins to get bigger and bigger with more and more valence. This ego then thinks that it rules the universe.
Yeah.
And it forgets it's connected to something else. That's what happens with ketamine, is that the charge of this begins to lessen, and the debris that coats whatever it is that connects us to this gets more visible in psychic terms. And so that's why so many people, when they wake up from ketamine for the first time, go, I feel lighter. This thing recognizes that it's part of something else. And I've seen that time and again with the people that have done the journeys, is that they say, I just feel like I'm connected to something larger. Well, we are, but how do we realize that? And that's one of the magnificent properties of ketamine, of Metis, is that it helps the ego be right-sized and recognize its connection to something larger. Those are the same things that are anchors of the 12-step program. So you guys are, you know that.
Yes, I do. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's like this great remembering that you are part of something else. And then I also would like to address just the neural function that ketamine helps with, because you mentioned that your suicidal ideation was taken away. And I didn't have that when I did my first ketamine infusion, which was at the beginning of the pandemic. Right before the pandemic started, I was invited to a ketamine clinic just to see it for their year anniversary. And I went and saw it and met the owner. And literally, I was called to do it really because literally like maybe a day before something, I was watching, I don't know, something on Instagram or something, and they were talking about ruminations. And I was like, I had never even heard the term ruminate or rumination. I don't know. Now I feel like it's everywhere, but I looked it up and I was like, this is what I do. I ruminate. Oh my God. I'll dwell on the same thoughts, which I think a lot of suicidal ideation can be. It can be those neural pathways that get ingrained, which is what a rumination is. It is neural pathways that get just ingrained in your brain, and your neurons are firing in one pattern and you can't seem to think anything else. And so I've done that my whole life. And so I went into this ketamine clinic, and the owner was just saying, hey, here's what it helps with. It helps with this, that, ruminations, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, ruminations? And so I was like, hey, I'd like to interview you, and can I try this? And so I went in and tried it once, and I was astonished because the next day I started thinking new thoughts about an old situation. And I thought, well, why have I never thought that before? That is a logical thought that I've never had about this situation. What the hell? And so I was so surprised. So I said it was like I had been tracing a circle in the sand for a very long time. And it wasn't even like somebody came and cleared this and made the sand a different circle or moved my circle. It was like someone came up and blew all the sand away. And I felt like that was the greatest benefit of it for me. Now I think, and I actually think like there is a brain chemistry thing that has been really super beneficial, even in our sessions.
Sure.
I think that yes, there was the soul consciousness aspect of it and the metis wisdom, which I have experienced as well. But also I think that there's just this really positive, and maybe those two things go hand in hand. I don't know.
They do. I think they're aspects of the same thing.
Are they? Can you explain that?
Well,
or how you see that?
The thing is that the ketamine is an anti-inflammatory. So
do we have inflammation in our brains in that regard?
It cools. I think that's a way of thinking about it. That's the way it's
cooling those neural pathways or something like that.
And I think that's a good way of looking at it. It recasts neural networks.
Neural networks.
So
yes.
It sets things. It's reset. It's a reset button.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at what level that happens with us individually? Somebody told me they felt like it was having new fallen snow, that they'd been in the same rut trying to get out.
Sled patterns.
And it was a new fallen snow. So we do know from the studies that it can help recast neural networks, and it is an anti-inflammatory. So I have people tell me, I feel relaxed. I'm looking at new things, and the obsessive compulsive components that where a lot of us
obsessive compulsive seems like it would fall under that same category, right?
It is.
Of a rumination of just how is my oven turned off,
And those thoughts get into those circular patterns, and they keep repeating themselves. Now, the other thing is that in addition to that, suicidal. And I want to go back to one other thing. So the SSRIs and the NRIs that we've had, medications to help.
What would an NRI be? An example of that?
Norepinephrine. Like Lexapro.
Okay.
So those are the agents that we've had available to take for severe depression. Mm-hmm. The thing is that in the best of studies that those work 40 to 50% of the time. And there's a long lag time between start, typically, and the effects. So if you've got somebody that's suicidal, depressed, then to my way of thinking, that an intervention that can get us in and with relatively few side effects, once we've screened those, that it can help save lives that way. And so, especially around transgender, that the studies have shown with IV, and nobody's done yet the intramuscular and troche rapidly dissolving troche forms to see if those would be as helpful. But there have been a couple of studies that have shown. There's a study out of 2019 that was a composite review, and in 23 studies done IV ketamine, that suicidal ideation was decreased. So the studies are being done, but they're slow. But the main thing is that it seems to change the way that we're thinking. Suicide, though, looks to be a combination of patterns in different parts of the brain and psyche. Mm-hmm. By psyche, I mean not just the brain, but the space that we're in, this field of probability that we really are.
Yeah, I mean, there's a heart consciousness too.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly. And that's my point is that that's maybe the main thing that we're dealing with is a heart consciousness. Call it whatever you want. But the other thing is that the suicidality looks to work in different parts of the brain. So it's not just one thing. So that's the thing with ketamine. It works in multiple pathways in multiple parts of the psyche in order to help. And so I think that's why it can be unique in the treatment of suicidality. And like I said, I mean, in a year's time, I saw scores and scores of transgender men and women. And I got the history and physical. I talked to them about their past history. And typically, if they had severe dysphoria, started them on cross-sex hormones. I didn't mention that, but that was another thing that I'd started very early with trying to help dampen the dysphoria that I was experiencing. And it helped greatly. So that can help, but still the number of those courageous men and women that I saw who had battled for a long time with thoughts of suicidal ideation. And you can imagine, if you grow up and you're young and your family doesn't support you and, your domestic abuse is there or whatever, and you're still maintaining that this is who you are, that authenticity. To my way of thinking, I mean, that's an amazing show of courage at an early age. And many of those people do attempt suicide. So those are the folks that I'm hopeful that we can move toward. Soldiers with PTSD and the trauma of where they've been. We just live in an age of quiet desperation. And I think that's where I'm trying to move what we're doing with Metis and ketamine into that space where we can offer it to those who really need it. So that's what I'm doing.
That's incredible. Let's talk too about the consciousness of it. I guess I was thinking about the fact that you say it starts working before you even, take the shot, right? It starts working as soon as you start thinking about that. They say that about other plant medicines in particular that I can think of, They mention ayahuasca as soon as you think about it or decide to do it. So, I mean, like if people are listening and curious about it, this perhaps is appearing to you for a reason. You might be listening to this more attentively because it said ketamine and you're interested and curious. I would say pay attention to that. But I am interested in the fact that, let me see if I can phrase this right. I guess, do you think like all drugs have that power to start working before you take them? What's special about this one that has that? Is it the soul consciousness? Is it like, why is this one special in that regard? What do you think taps you in? And then also that spills over into the fact that, I think you have phrased it as a backwash of serenity. So you have an experience when you're sitting there with someone, which is really cool too. So what do you think?
Well, I don't think that you can just cast that broad net and say that everybody will have that experience, even in the best of circumstances. again, it's kind of like going to mass. I mean, not everybody has the same experience going in. A lot of it depends on set and setting.
Yeah.
So I think, though, that's what I'm really focused on, is trying to help create this container to anchor a psychedelic experience. So I think it's really what my awareness is coming into the situation. Now, I'm not unique.
Like the reverence for the medicine, too, that you're talking about. You're honoring it from the get-go, so it's bringing a different whole energy.
And I believe that.
Yeah, if we're getting shit from Big Pharma, that's not going to be the same thing.
No, now, is it unique with it? No. I mean, I can help people to learn how to do this. And I've got a nurse practitioner who's extremely gifted in casting that container in the same way that I am. I've seen her work. So I know that it can be shared and taught. That's what I think is important in trying to help educate others about how this can work. Now, the other
I like that. I think that goes for a lot of things. Like, here's how it can work.
How it can work. Mm-hmm. If it's used and augmented, we augment the power of the drug. Now, I think each of those psychedelics has its own teacher or teaching. The ayahuasca experiences that I've participated in.
Oh, so you have done that?
Yes.
Okay. When was that?
Well, I originally did it in Mexico at a long retreat. I went with another friend of mine who was suicidal, and the family didn't know what to do, and he was really on the verge of suicide. They found a clinic in Baja, and so I said, listen, pay my way and I'll go with you and shepherd you through. So it was a month of drastic change in diet, prayer, meditation, yoga, all sorts of things in order to help influence the immune system, psyche, in whatever way. And then at the last, we did ibogaine, and then 3 days of ayahuasca. So that was in 2017. And I can tell you from my experience, especially, and so I've come back here. There's a really good shaman who comes to this part of the world several times a year. And so I've done the ayahuasca here in Austin, or actually in Wimberley, a couple of times. But again, it's the shaman that's the important thing. In Mexico, it was the shaman that I worked with that guided that I think made the whole experience something more than just getting high. Those things, the ibogaine and the ayahuasca experience there were completely revelatory in a lot of different ways, but they're completely different from the dissociative experience that we have with Metis, with ketamine. And so that's what. Now, if you ask me what the one characteristic of Metis is, I'd say it was love. I think there's something that you can say around what the property of an agent is, but I haven't found anybody that's had a horrible experience with Metis. And the multiple people that I've treated now, scores, that there just isn't such thing as a bad trip. Now, there may be times when things are not as obvious, where there's more dullness to, or not as great a sheen. But depending upon the individual, I always tell them before we start, if you feel like you're so lost and there's a consciousness that you can use, all you have to do is think about love or love bears all things is what we've talked about. And that seems to be an anchor that brings people back to a certain reality.
It does.
And so, but to answer the question, yeah, I think there are different teachers or different consciousness with each of the drugs. But the main thing is that none of them are going to be experienced that way unless the psychedelic experience is tethered to something. And that's what we're doing with the Metis. We're creating a container to contain the experience. And so,
I mean, I guess it's kind of redundant because what we were already talking about earlier was like the energy behind everything, it's like a kind of a reiteration of that.
Amy, quantum physics,
quantum physics
has told us that. I mean, we're all part of something larger. I mean, it is the force. I mean, I remember seeing Star Wars when it first came out, and but the force resonated. There, we do participate in that. So I believe it.
I do too. I'm having a manifesting scientist on next week, as a matter of fact, which I can't wait. I know.
Wow.
And she's young. I can't wait to hear what she has to say. She's a trip. So, yeah.
Well, and I think you've tapped into a need that people have to go deeper into themselves, into an understanding of their own lives. There's so many there's so much minutia out there, so many images, there's so much data out there, and people still have this longing to be to do soul work. It's built into us, and so what you're doing influences what others of us are doing, and it's the same pattern.
I feel like I can't not do it. Like I just feel like for myself, I just feel like I have to do it. And so I'll keep sharing what I'm doing. Like we were talking about, maybe you doing a podcast, like share what you're doing and just trust, like, okay. But you know what? One of the reasons I'm sitting here right now is because of a vision I had on ketamine, which was, that I saw like my voice with wings on it, like rising up to the whole world, and like everybody else's voice with their wings on it rising up. And I was like, yes. So, yes.
Amen. And I think I always couch the experience with folks and say, I can't, I wish I could guarantee that you have a wonderful visionary experience. And a lot of times that happens. But again, how it happens, it is the deep mystery. And, but how frequently it occurs with ketamine and Metis is the other deep mystery. And which I'm extremely grateful for now knowing, because when I started into this, all I knew is that it could help with suicidality, depression, deep depression, and moved in under that with that intent. But all these teachings that have come from it, and all of the wonderful people and the experiences now that beginning to share, it's amazing. And so I'm the one that's gifted, because as we've talked about before, in that shared container, even when you're undergoing the 45 minutes to an hour where you're disassociated, where you're listening to music and out of your normal state of consciousness, there is something in that arena, in that room, that is palpable. And so that's what I get to sit in. Yeah. And so it's that backwash that we've talked about that I think is a real side benefit for me. But, I've heard this for many years, but, we heal as we help others to heal. And I think that's
big time.
That's the basic of it.
Yeah. And just to go back to when you were talking about having visions and things like that, I would say that's rare for me in that experience. Like what you're talking about really is the things that make the biggest difference are the fact that fundamentally there's something in there in your unconscious or subconscious that is shifted. Yeah. And you come out, while I'm in it, I'm always like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm going to remember all this. And then you get out and I'm like, what happened? You know, like you really can't. You're like wandering in the cosmos and you aren't sure what happened a lot of times. And I just, if anyone was listening and felt like they didn't have a vision or something like that, that's okay. It's like affecting you in there. It's rattling around in there somewhere. So just trust.
I think it changes our DNA. I mean, I really think that we're
like, you really think it changes our DNA?
No. Can I prove that?
Okay. No, but you think so. I mean, you're a doctor. I want to listen to what you think.
Well, but
can you prove that? No, but what do you think?
I believe it. And
really?
I think that we're altered fundamentally by doing the things in the way that we're talking about doing them. Now, how is that passed? How could it be that generations from now, somebody that is a relative would have the same sort of thought or experience? Why? So somehow all of that gets changed, and somehow it's communicated. And so, I mean, we're beginning to learn more and more, about how information is encoded in our gene pool. And so, I think that there's some alteration that goes on. It may not be a one-off thing. It may require a certain number of experiences like this. I don't know. But I do think that it's capable of changes that we're not aware of on a conscious level. And probably those unconscious changes may, in fact, turn out to be the most vital things that it does.
I love that, and I agree. Yes. What are some of your goals right now with this? I know it's just to help people and to provide this cool new model that you have of, paying attention to the setting for this.
Well, when I started this, it was just, basically, how could I get back into practice? How could I pay bills? And do the most for the most good and in the right way. So I think there are two things. One, to continue to sustain this and at least have people that have experienced it tell somebody else that tells somebody else. I don't want to get rich from this. I mean, that's not my intent. Obviously, I can't do enough in a day in order to do it. And right now it's a one-man show. But one, I want to get this on more firm financial founding, so that we can look toward that I can begin to spread out, have a couple of nurse practitioners who are of the same belief pattern that can help with me, and that we begin to do this on a broader scale. The second thing is I want to get into studies, especially with the medical school. Those double-blind studies need to be done, and especially
I was going to ask that. That's really cool. Good.
Yeah, around transgender, around suicidal ideation. And the other thing is there's a pharmacist in town that's one of a world-class compounding pharmacy. And what I'm beginning to see is that instead of doing the intramuscular, which we're doing, that the troche, rapidly dissolving troche, seems to have a similar effect as the intramuscular. It takes just a little bit longer, but the absorption is almost the same, which is over 90%. So IV drift in over 40-minute period or whatever a clinic offers is one thing. But again, that's spread out over a period of time. Intramuscular, like we've done it, happens with blood into a large muscle group in about 3 to 5 minutes. Absorption IV is about 98%. IM is about 93%. With troche, looks to be about 90%. So if I can give troche, constellate the container, we don't have to do any needles, worry about any of that, then it's easier to do those things. it's cheaper to do those things. And so, but nobody has studied IM and nobody has studied Troche in the settings that we're talking about. So I'd like to participate in that. The other thing is that, I'd like to become a thought leader, especially around transgender and late in life transitions of all sorts and callings. So I think that's the other place that I'd like to head.
Well, you already are.
Oh, well, thank you.
I mean, let's be real. You already are. Yes. I don't think you have to become a thought leader. You already are. Become recognized as a thought leader. Maybe more of that, right?
Well, yeah. And we're, there's a friend of mine and I we've got a spot at South by Southwest this year.
Great. And yes. So, tell me more on what that's going to be.
Well, there's actually a psychedelic,
like a forum or something? Or?
Yeah. I mean, there's a tract this year that's psychedelics.
Excellent.
And so, I mean, you can tell, there's so many people that are interested in it, especially.
South by is all about innovation. And I would say this is happening right now. So yeah, let's talk about it.
Forward thinking. So a good friend of mine, Megan Fitzpatrick, who is somebody that I've known for a long time and just extremely gifted in her own way. She's in the industry now as well, but she and I are going to do an interview, an hour and a half on March the 14th. And we're calling it Keeping the Soul in Psychedelics, and talking about the things that we're talking about today.
Yes. So, ooh, that's perfect for you.
Yeah.
Well, incredible.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really going to call to a lot of people there. And congratulations. I'm so happy for you to be amplified in this way.
That's the thing. I think we have to have a little bit of stamina, as our roots grow a little bit deeper. And, I know that there have been times that you've worried about, is this going to work? Or, what's the staying power related to here and this and that? And so I just want to have deep enough roots to be able to weather this initial part of just getting known and getting started. And then, trying to do the most I can for the most folks.
I hear you on all that.
Yeah,
same. Yes.
Well, we're in the same, we're on the same journey.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to know that there are kindred souls. And I think that's the thing. Once you meet one, you just know the feeling, and there's a resonance of the heart.
Yes.
That there's an imagination of the heart, and in the Sufi tradition, it's called himma. I love the word because it says so much about.
And that means like a heart resonance?
The heart imagination.
Heart imagination.
Imagination.
Would you use it like we have a himma, or would you say, how do you use it?
You are living himma.
You are living himma.
Himma is living you. That's the whole thing. It's an imagination based on the heart, not just in the head. And culturally,
I feel that.
You do.
As we talk about it.
Well, and it is. It's something that you feel. And so, but once you're touched by it, then you're changed.
You don't get untouched by it.
You don't get untouched. I brought you a little gift.
You did bring me a gift. Let's open it. It's gift time. Wonderful. Yay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You've been so giving, and I'm just so happy to give back to you and share you on this show. So thank you. What did you bring? Lisa Crowder Studio. Who's that?
Yeah. Lisa Crowder is a local jeweler creator.
It's a bracelet. And it says Grace. You know what? That's so funny. I had in my notes to talk to you about your name, Sheila Grace. It's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Do you have a matching one?
I do.
Yay.
Yes.
Awesome. This is gorgeous. Thank you so much. I've got it on right now.
Yay.
Let's see. There we are. Yeah. I can hold it to the thing. So,
people have asked me about my name, and all I can say is that it just kind of showed up like everything else did. One day it was there, and I knew from the time on the porch, Sheila, you're a woman and always have been. I knew that was the name. I had seen an image of the face that I have actually in a hotel room in Las Vegas in 2002, and didn't realize until fairly late 2019 that this was the face of who I was looking at when I recalled. And so again, it's something that's lived itself forward. But the name Grace, the image of Grace just kind of showed up, and I think that it more and more it frames exactly what we're talking about. There's a force in the world you can't explain, and it's the thing that binds us together. It bridges things. It comes into containers. It is the container, and I think that grace is something that we all look for and appreciate. So,
well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, as we're wrapping up, I want to just offer you the floor to say anything that you'd like to reiterate or anything that's on your heart or that you don't want to leave without saying today. So just turn it over to you. Feel free to take a minute if you want to just sit for a second. It's totally cool.
Well, I think that I'd speak to anyone who is later in life. And later in life, I say, after 60, it's never too late to live who you are. And the people that I see that populate the world now, and we've got so much ability to have images and to have stories told. But, we as the elders need to help. We need to tell our stories, which help others in their own transitions. And I think we've lost so much of the ritual that goes along with life transition. And so, there's no movement in in primitive societies with after puberty, there was a ritual around that the tribe would have. With marriage, we do have that, but it gets to be more of a social thing as opposed to a consecrating ritual. And then, all points in our lives, we can find other ways in order to ritualize and celebrate in order to help those that are younger and are maturing to have something that they're able to be based in, that they're able to be anchored in. We have so much that we are anchored, so much less that we're anchored in. And I think as elders, we need to help to tell those stories, to help recreate those containers that those that are younger can have and pass those on, because they only enlarge. So I think that it's a matter of just maintaining a passion about being and saying and doing who you are. That authenticity helps to fuel the stories and rituals that I think help culture. And we haven't seen that, I think, to the degree that we might have seen in some cultures in the past. But those images and stories that we help to create are important, not only for us, for our own soul making, but also for the soul making of those coming behind us.
And I think probably a lot of people that are older might think about ketamine or an experience like this and think, I'm too old for that. You know what I mean? And you're really not. So
I'm 72 this year, and I can tell you that it's never too late. Now, the thing that I do a job of, and as is a nephrologist and critical care specialist for years, I just make sure there's no medical condition, chronic medical condition that is untoward that would prevent somebody from even experiencing this. But once we get past that, if there's nothing that is contraindicatory, then I don't think age is a modifier that's applicable here. In fact, it may have even more impact in those who have a broader history,
experience.
Yeah, life experience.
Right. So you're exactly right. That's cool. That's cool to think of. Like you might have a richer experience. So. Approach it with that. Amen. Reframe that.
Yes.
So anyway, well, that is beautiful. I want to tell everybody how they can find you too, in case they want to get in touch with you for Metis. And of course, it's available here in Austin as well. But, people can probably tune in and watch your South by. I'm guessing a lot of it will be virtual as well.
It will be. And all of this is appendaged to my website, Finding Metis.
METIS.
METIS. FindingMetis.com.
Good, cool. So that's the easiest. That's the easiest spot.
Yeah.
Sheila, Grace, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to cherish this bracelet, and I just want to say a huge thank you. Thank you for sharing your voice and all that you're doing. And it's really been such a beautiful evolution to see of you. Yes.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Back at you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much to Dr. Sheila Grace Newsom for being here today. That was an incredible conversation. It flew by for us too. I hope it did for you. And if you need to find Finding Metis or want to know more, they have an absolutely gorgeous website, Finding Metis, METIS.com. Very easy to find. And there's everything about Sheila on there too. So go there and check it all out and learn more. If you're just curious too, it's worth looking into because there are so many positive benefits, and I can speak firsthand about that, as Sheila can as well. So thank you so much for being here today. I am just so stoked. And like I said, I did have a ketamine vision. Like I had a vision that my voice was rising up. And I thought, that's ambitious. Around the world? Come on, But you know what? Trust your visions. Trust them. Trust your calling. Trust what you're called to do. I saw wings on my voice, but I saw so many voices with wings as a result. So maybe you have something that needs to be said. Maybe you have a calling that is deep inside you. Let it out. What is it? Go for it at any age. At any age. And look at Sheila. If you're not inspired by that, come on, right? That's super inspiring. Okay. And yes, we need an affirmation for today. Our affirmation today, I think, has something to do with grace. I kind of think these up on the spot as I feel them. And I think it's, I give myself grace. Because so many times we want to approach things with grace in our lives, but don't forget about yourself. I give myself grace. But you know what? If you want to fill in something else too, I give others grace. I give situations grace. Yeah. Give yourself grace. Give some grace. Just like she gave me grace today on this little bracelet. So thank you. This Lisa, I think it was, let me check Lisa Crowder Studio bracelet. It's really sweet. So I love that. I give myself grace. And if you want to give me some grace too, please leave a review. I am working on, for the next, I think I was doing 60 days trying to build up to 100 reviews. That is a way to show some love that I would be just utterly grateful for. So if you can leave a review or rating wherever you're listening, mainly Apple Podcasts too, it helps us bring this podcast to more people, get all sorts of interesting guests. Not that we don't already, we do, but just keep growing. So please do. I would be so, so grateful. And I'm just so grateful to be sitting here and to be with you. And thank you, Alyssa, who was on detail today. And thank you to you. Remember to give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. I did this weekend. You can too. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. And what is grace? Grace is just ease, space, love. That's right. Understanding. Allowing. It's all good stuff. Remember, you have all the tools you need right there, just right there inside you. So take a breath. Remember that. Remember who you are. You are a powerful, magical being. And I love you. You are loved. Have a beautiful one. Till next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this show, please rate and review. It totally matters. And I encourage you to spread the love too and share this episode with a friend if you feel called.